So Liam, you're originally from Ireland, but I don't think you have a home. You're jetting between San Francisco and Shenzhen. Why? What does PCH International do?
So it's a product development company with supply chain expertise. So we work with companies, and when I look around the audience, I see a lot of our products in the audience. So we work with originally with big brands where they come up with a concept and idea for a product. They hand it to us, and we go figure out how to make it.
You don't have huge numbers of people physically making things. You have relationships with people who make things.
Yeah, directly we have about 5,000 people of our own, but indirectly we have about 30,000 people on our, that work on dedicated products at any one time.
And where are these people mostly based?
Majority of the people are based in China. The head office of the company is in Ireland still. Our client base is mostly in Silicon Valley, but most of the operations are in Shenzhen, in China.
And you're probably going to breach lots of confidentiality agreements, but just between us, name some of the companies. Name some of the companies that you're helping make stuff for.
Yeah, we don't talk about specific clients, but clients do talk about, they release their supplier list. One company is Apple. Apple has, I think, 200 companies on their supply base. They have on the component list. They have 7 final assembly companies, 6 Taiwanese companies, and us. And then Beats by Dre is a headphone company. And then other companies you probably haven't heard of, which would be Xiaomi, which is an Android phone company based in China, which is probably one of the fastest growing companies in the technology space in China. So again, we've started an accelerator business about 2 years ago. This year we've just started an incubator business, which is in San Francisco. We've just launched the first program there where we have 11 startups going through that program.
So these household names and the devices that all of us own, and there's a few more I could mention, I don't want to get you into trouble, but very cool little loudspeakers, I think people that make those. Are we allowed to talk about those?
No.
You can guess. Anyway, these companies come to you to get stuff done. They don't go directly to the factory.
Yeah, in some cases, they'll know the factories. Again, when I went to China first in '96, China was a knowledge-based challenge. All you had to do was find the name card of a factory, and you were in business because the chance of somebody finding that factory was 0. Never happened. 2003, we noticed that had completely changed, that China had moved from a knowledge-based challenge to an execution-based challenge. So by that we meant that, all over the web you could find, any factory to make anything in China. So our competitive advantage was no longer there. So we had to move up the value chain. We had to open our own facilities. And that's where we actually opened a packaging facility in Shenzhen. And then it was all about world-class execution. And it was about how can we take what was great about the manufacturing part of Shenzhen and how do we actually add, complexity to it or take away the complexity part of it by doing the packaging. It's amazing, like people can make some very complicated products and they can get the simple part wrong, just putting the wrong label on it and all that. And from that we developed, a packaging expertise. That was the second part of our business, which was managing the out-of-box experience. Some of the products that you're using, when you actually take them out of the box, there's a phenomenal experience, and that's called the OB, or the out-of-box experience. We do a lot of work with a lot of our clients to ensure that happens.
And this is done by your own employees in the Shenzhen area. And there's a third element, as well as getting stuff made and getting stuff packaged. You're also arranging the logistics to get it delivered.
That was probably one of the magic parts of it. I think when we look at manufacturing, people will ask us lots of questions like, will manufacturing come back to Europe? Will it come back to the US? And we think that, we have a saying in the business at the moment, in business, geography is history. And where a product is made, it can be made, it doesn't matter where it's made. For us, it's about being with our fulfillment center. We like to be 3 hours away from the factory and 3 days away from 90% of the consumers that buy the products. So we can make a product, pack it, and ship it direct to a consumer anywhere in the world, and it takes about 3 days. Now, we don't make it from start in that 3 days, but we actually have built buffer stocks. And that we found was one of the big de-riskers when we look at, especially for startups, And it's interesting, you know, that term geography is history came from, we were on a conference call with one of our accelerator companies about a year ago. And you know, when we do a big rollout for some of the bigger companies, from when they launch in the first country to when they launch in the last country, it can be anything up to 6 months. In some cases, it can be 9 months. And, you know, just like, you know, all of the professors that Jack wrote to, you know, we never question why, right? And we thought, yeah, okay, 6 months, it's fine. But we were on a call with one of the startups, and they wanted to do a Kickstarter program that was very successful, and they were ready to ship the product. And they said to us, so we said, okay, which countries do you want to ship to first? And there was a big silence. And the guy on the other end of the phone said, let's go alphabetic. And we said, okay. And we couldn't come up with a reason why we shouldn't, right? And so we did. And we shipped to 88 countries and started on the same day. And it was amazing. And then, you know, we did it for the next one. And one day, one of our bigger clients was in a facility, and he saw all this chaos going on in the facility. He said, what are you doing? We said, we have a worldwide ship going on today, a launch. And he said, wow. He said, maybe we should try that. And it's amazing because, you know, we don't question things enough. And I think we saw it in 2008, was when we saw a kickstart in innovation. In 2008 was when there was a downturn. And we were being asked, you know, how does the downturn affect you? And it was actually fantastic, because what was happening was people were being let go from companies in Silicon Valley. So all the engineers were being let go, and they were going into their garages because they wanted to make stuff because they thought they could. And in China, factories were letting people go, but some of them said, no, let's try and get them to innovate and come up with new ideas for products. So we saw the greatest surge in innovation starting then, and evidence of it today, which is, you know, which we're really excited by.
So I come to you, I'm a big Western manufacturing brand, and I say, I've got this idea for a new type of headphone. Can you find the factory that can make it most cheaply, most efficiently, and of a certain quality?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we work with companies that are passionate about design, they're passionate about their brand, and they're passionate about the consumer experience. So if they look for the cheapest price, we're not interested in the conversation. It's interesting that if we sit with entrepreneurs and startups in Silicon Valley, they will predominantly want to make an accessory. If we sit with entrepreneurs in Europe, they want to make an accessory. We sit with entrepreneurs in China, they want to make a phone or they want to make a device. And we've questioned that, and we've tried to understand why. And the barrier to entry is the distribution channels in the US, especially in the US for the big box retailers. And this is why we work with companies that are really passionate about the brand design and the consumer experience, because they understand the value. So that's why if they ask for the cheapest cost, we're not really interested. If they want a great experience and we can manage it end to end, we'll do it. But it's interesting, the barrier to entry in the US is the big box retailers create these horrible contracts that they put in front of startups that what happens is the venture capital will not fund the projects, okay? And if they do, they're paranoid about the whole inventory risk and the whole liability risk. And what we work with the startups is we try and short circuit that. It's interesting, in China, Carl put up Kickstarter there and Indiegogo. The most successful campaign on Kickstarter was Pebble, the watch company. They raised, I think, just over $10 million on Kickstarter. I was in Xiaomi's office in Beijing the day that Kickstarter, or that Pebble reached $10 million. And it $10 million in 45 days. And the same day I was in Beijing with Xiaomi, and they had launched their second phone, and they did $10 million in 90 seconds. Right? So the online market there is just huge. And you can actually make a product in China and sell it direct to consumers. The online e-commerce market there is phenomenal. And it's big enough for them to be able to connect with the consumers and to build a community. Whereas it's much harder because in the US, you've got to have all the carrier relationship, you've got to have, it's just very hard to actually do it. We think that's going to change.
So you're working with hardware startups now. I went to visit your new building in San Francisco. It used to be the Radical Newspapers building. But now it's a space where you're working with a whole bunch of small, talented teams. and you're helping them get stuff manufactured.
Yeah, we created an incubator called Hybrid One, which is taking startups that have an idea for a product and they want to commercialize it. And we put them through a 4-month program, and we do everything, give them all access to all of our services end to end, and we do everything we can to ensure that they can actually ship a product. And it's amazing. We really love their inexperience. We think that their inexperience is the greatest innovator that comes through these through the projects. And we just, we rather than say no, that's stupid, we can say tell us more. Why should we do that? And try and understand it. And some of the companies, we have 11 companies going through the first program. Started 2 weeks ago, and they are just phenomenal.
What sort of things are they making?
Mostly connected devices. Again, none of them have actually gone public yet. Some of them have raised money. 3 of the companies, I think, have come out of the Teal Fellowship, so they would have been pretty young, pretty smart. Then I think 8 of them are from America. 1 actually is from Portugal, 1 from Ireland, 1 from Slovenia, I think. So yeah.
So what's actually happening is there's a democratization of manufacturing. These small teams, through a company like PCH International, can get stuff made at these big factories without having those personal connections, without having that massive funding. What do you think the implications are for the wider manufacturing industry?
I think that, with supply chain shrinking, and again, we go 3 hours from the factory, 3 days away from the consumers, the community that buy the product, we actually think that that's going to drive innovation. The barrier to entry for making hardware, once you take out that whole big bulk of inventory, you actually bring the barrier down. And what's happening is that the venture capital community is getting very interested, and it's now looking at the space where they never looked at it before because they were afraid of it. There's other accelerator and incubator programs that are being started by many different companies, and it's actually fueling a lot of innovation and a lot of creativity. It's at its infancy. It's still very, very early, but we're seeing some great companies out of it. We had Little Bits, I think, in New York. Lively in San Francisco has just started shipping. It's that's going to go through some pretty interesting growth. They just raised, I think, about $4.5 million in the last couple of weeks. Then MetaWatch down in Dallas, again, they've been pretty successful and they're selling their watch as well. So again, it's also encouraging other startups to think about the ability of making hardware.
So when you first turned up in Shenzhen in 1996, did you have a plan in mind?
Survival.
So you went there to get to know some factory owners because you saw an opportunity.
It was curiosity. I mean, it was when, what I felt was that a lot of the trading companies that were controlling what was going on in the factories were based in places like Hong Kong, and confusion was their only competitive advantage. So if I could take the confusion out of it and go into China and go direct to the factories, I found that there was a huge willingness from the factories to really work and to learn and to innovate and to actually, improve and to develop. So that's what kind of kept me there and kept me interested in seeing, what else could you do if you could, we look at, 3D printers today, and they're fantastic, but you're not going to print a smartphone on a 3D printer, not just yet. We think you can build a building that's the equivalent of a 3D printer, that you can actually build a smartphone in a building, but you don't need to build like 1 million units a week or anything like that. You can do maybe 1,000 units just as a trial run. But we think we can build small, self-contained facilities that you can actually build commercial devices in.
So you quickly became the go-to guy for companies wanting to know where to get things made and how to trust the factories. I think some profiles have called you Mr. China. How did you scale up to have 5,000 employees? So for the first 2 years, I worked alone because I just really needed to understand it and to understand was there an opportunity there. And then slowly, I think 2001, I actually brought the entire company to our head office in Cork for a week. It was in 2001, and it was like 14 people. And we grew through different stages, like
96 to 2003, we were a trading company. 2003 forward, we became like a real value-add supply chain company. And more, once we won contracts with bigger companies, it facilitated us to really help them, and they became more dependent on some of the services we were offering. So we then add, just evolve over time. I think we've opened about 16 different entities in China, between manufacturing and logistics, in many locations.
So, last question. There's a lot of people, especially in East London, creating software apps, creating internet e-commerce businesses. But you see new opportunities in manufacturing physical products. So what would your message be for people who have an idea for a hardware product but don't quite know how to go about it?
Apply to Highway 1 for the next batch of classes.
Apart from
So there are plenty of tools out there. There are plenty of resources out there if you want to make a product now. It's there are companies there that are really keen to help, and we're seeing even in China there are small factories that want to do end-to-end solutions. I would start with going to some of the manufacturing or some of the electronics, because that's the world we're in. I'd go to some of the electronic trade shows. That's a big part of it. At the end of the day, we work with a lot of great companies. Some of the best designers we work with, the industrial designers and product ideas, come from the UK. I mean, the people who are really passionate about the detail and about the, perfection on a product, they come from here. And we think that there's great opportunity. We're excited actually to look at how we can enable companies here to make products.
The world's getting smaller. Thank you very much, Liam Casey.